Well, good morning. So today we're on lesson number 62, I believe. Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. It's interesting. I picked up the Sparkly edition last night and read this before I went to bed. And before the end of the first paragraph, I was so, let's say, turned on by the lesson that it was took a moment to get to sleep, and then I woke up this morning in contact, I would guess that's what you would call it. When I opened the computer, the first thing that was there was an email from a woman who has asked me to send her these lessons, and received a lesson and asked a question that really helped me open my mind, which harkens to what Jesus teaches us and tries to get us to understand in the workbook, in the manual for teachers itself, that the student always brings the lesson that the teacher can learn and cannot learn apart from the student. So in that case, there's no difference in the student or the teacher as learners. Both learn as one when the student is allowed to bring the lesson that neither can learn apart, because the only lesson we're ever learning is that the idea that we're separate has no reality and has no ability to affect who we are. And through the forgiveness of the idea of separation in its myriad of forms, we become more and more sure that every question that the ego asks is just merely a restatement of how did the impossible happen, and the fact that it did happen. And each action of forgiveness that we utilize within our own mind, and each moment when we make a miraculous contact with our brother through our interactions, through the intimacy of our interactions, because we're already one, is the recognition that the impossible never did happen, is not happening now, and can't happen in the future. The tech crew once told me, and they called it virtual awakening that takes place in each and every one of us in this world, in this seeming world of space and time, is the experiential recognition that the impossible did not occur, could not occur, and is not occurring now. And the ability for that question, which again is the only question the ego ever asks, because there's no answer to it but an experience. The only question the ego ever asks, and the fact that every time the ego does ask that question and someone attempts to give you an answer to the question within the conceptual framework within which the question is asked, actually reinforces the validity of the question as having truth and reality to it, which is why the experience is necessary to come to replace the ability for the question to have any value, and the laughing at the question as always being impossible and never having occurred is simply the answer into eternity, where all was one. Crept a tiny mad idea. I wish the Son of God remembered not to laugh. At one point, Jesus is talking to Helen, and Helen says, how did this possible happen? He said, why would you worry about how it happened in the past when it continues to happen right now? We let the effects be our cause. We make up these things we call churches, make up the rules by which the church is going to be governed, and then allow the rules that we made up to govern us as we reenact what space and time is for each and every moment. It's ludicrous and laughable when you look at it, but you really have to look at it through the eyes of the Holy Spirit and not let the ego continue to usurp the teaching that you're using to awake yourself, because it always will. The ego learns faster than you're capable of integrating the truth here in space and time, because the ego does not operate in space and time. It operates in your mind. It gets played out simultaneous to the acting out within your mind But it's why the ego speaks louder, speaks first, and will always co-opt your own teaching and hang you by it. It's that simple. And I watch it happen over and over again. And we can talk about it over and over again. Yet an unwilling mind, one that is not willing to understand, using the will against the understanding and the truth of understanding, will never ever hear it because it does not want to. Somewhere in the back or front of its mind, it wants this world to be true and thinks that there's something that you could succeed at it here. It's just simply not so. So forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. And the only thing you're ever forgiving is yourself for the belief that the effect that you've made of yourself as a body in space and time has causation and can cause you to be sick, suffering, and eventually die. Okay. It is your forgiveness that will bring the world of darkness to light. It is your forgiveness that lets you recognize the light in which you see. Forgiveness is the demonstration that you are the light of the world. Now, this was the line that really got me because it helped me to remember. Through your forgiveness, does the truth about yourself return to your memory. This is all done by memory. In that sense, it's Groundhog Day. You can no longer convince me that the past exists in a linear direction of backward or forward in space and time as a past and future, because it's all held together in memory. It's not held together by space and time at all. I don't know if I can teach this, but certainly you can see it this way, and that's the vision that comes from the Holy Spirit. It's held together by memory. The idea of space and time, your past history and your anticipated future history, is gone and not here now. It is held together in memory, and the space and time within which it exists only exists within your mind, not in space and time, because space and time are one illusion. Here we go. Illusions about yourself and the world are one. The illusion that you have a past, the illusion that you have a future, is held together in your memory, not by space and time itself. I can say it over and over. Only a mind that wants to be open to the truth will ever hear this, because you, the ego, the body, cannot hear this. It's not possible. You were designed, this body was designed by you to not hear what this simple message is. It's that simple. But you, the reality behind the body, the soul, not the image, hears this perfectly well and already knows it to be true, and that is the source of your discomfort. The nature of the email that I received this morning was based on, as so much of the misunderstanding is, and so many of our blocks are, unworthiness. Okay, what I've been taught in my own revelations and awakening is this. Okay, there's a positive way to understand everything that occurs to you, rather than using it in a negative way against yourself. The reason why you feel unworthy, and I have felt unworthy, and unworthiness is always the effect of an errant belief in ourselves, is because of this. As the home of God's Son, your body is not worthy. It is not eternal. It is founded and based in limitation. And deep in your heart of hearts, you already know that to be true. Otherwise, you could not suffer from unworthiness. The skill of identification that we utilize to either identify with the ego or identify with the soul makes the identification feel as if it's real in our experience of ourselves. The unworthy nature and the shame that we experience is based not on anything within the illusion of space and time. It is based on the fact that you already know is true. It is based on the fact and the idea that the body is not a worthy home for you, the Son of God. There is no spatial temporal reference. There is no time and space. There is no materially existent beingness that could be worthy of you, the eternal and infinite love of God. It is just not possible. And it is why we suffer unworthiness and shame, because the body is a poor and shameful substitution for your reality, and deep down inside, you already all know this is true. In A Course in Miracles, Jesus refrains the statement that body is the temple of the Holy Spirit to say, your relationship is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And it is why so many people who allow their spiritual revelations and the teachings that evolve from them to be co-opted by the ego, because the intimacy that is required to enter into true relationship with your brother and join with him is the solution. And the idea that you could find the answer alone in silence in some cave, while it is quite appealing with the thought and to the thought that you could shut out the world and go within, is false in and of itself. The body and its location is not the temple and never will be the temple of the truth of who you are. Your relationship is and always will be. Your relationship with God is your relationship to everything. Everything you see verifies your relationship to God, be it one of egoic shame and loathing, lack of self-worth, or be it one of joining with God and therefore your brother, to recognize the truth of who you are as not being separate from anything, including your reality, and including the dream of space and time. But it's a dream, it is not your reality. That's why acceptance of all things exactly as they are is a requirement. Because in that acceptance, both sides of the split of your mind become focused on what is true. Truth and reality can be exactly as it is, and you can be exactly where you are within it. And the illusion of space and time and the bodily identity as being part of that illusion can be exactly what it is and merely a dream. I hope that's understandable to you. It is why forgiveness is my function as the light of the world, because forgiveness is a momentary allowance for the release of you from the misidentification of the ego with the body and the world as your cause rather than the effect. It's a momentary release from that identification, wherein which you identify with the truth of who you are, and the Holy Spirit comes, because he's always been there waiting. Always, never anyplace else. It is our minds that wander, not reality, not the Holy Spirit, not your true brothers, and not Jesus or God. It is our mind that wanders away from that simple understanding. And as we return our mind, which is the action of forgiveness, to that true recognition, and we begin to experience the light that the Holy Spirit restores and reopens the light of our spiritual eye, we begin to, as this says, through forgiveness does the truth about yourself return to your memory, And that memory begins to replace the memories of space and time as being your reality. You cannot prove there was ever a yesterday, and you cannot prove there'll ever be a tomorrow. They are held together in your mind by memory, and that memory is not true. Illusions about yourself and the world as one. That is why all forgiveness is a gift to yourself. Your goal is to find out who you are. Having denied your identity by attacking creation and its creator, now you are learning how to remember the truth. Remember, this book, A Course in Miracles, and these lessons is a method by which you can remember the truth. So you are learning lessons that will allow you to remember the truth, but it is the application of the lessons that will let the experience that this course is designed to bring to you be true. And it is the application and the experiences that come from the lessons of A Course in Miracles that will demonstrate to you the truth of the theoretical framework that we call the text. And then you will begin to utilize the Manual for Teachers as a way to begin to miraculously interact with your brothers. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness, and in that it is intrapersonal. Miracles are interpersonal demonstrations of the fact that you've forgiven yourself and thereby forgiven your brother and accepted him exactly as he is. All of this demonstrates the truth of as above, so below, as within, so without. It is the simplest yet most profound teaching in the entire universe. And yet, because of the simplicity, and the simplicity of reality, and the simplicity of who you are in reality, the complexity of the ego, and the thought that the intellectualization of the complexity has value, because the world has placed great value and given those who have the ability to utilize it great reward. It is the reason why ultimately you will, at one single moment, give up the world in its entirety and return to the recognition of your natural state. Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. You cannot forgive alone. You forgive by the power of God and the Holy Spirit that was already within you and has always been within you because you are it. In that sense, even the word within is slightly misleading because there's no such thing as within or without. In reality, it is an entirety and a totality. And it is the entirety of the totality of the nature of the truth of who you are as the living, loving, eternal, and infinite love of God that is being restored to your memory by the willingness not merely to hear my voice and read these lessons, but to practice them in all your affairs. Be you blessed. Be you perfect as you have already been created.